adventure.
Every day across the Caribbean, non-food goods made locally, regionally, and internationally make their way into the hands of consumers. And from time to time, some of those goods may be defective and might actually cause harm. The Caricom Rapid Alert System for the Exchange of Information on Dangerous Non-Food Consumer Goods, CAREX, has been set up to protect you. If you receive dangerous goods, you can file a complaint with your local CAREX contact point, or you can log on to www.carex.caricom.org and fill out the online form. The relevant agency will investigate, and once that is complete, the CAREX system will alert other countries in the region so that consumers will be protected from goods that pose a serious risk. For more information and to see the categories of goods covered under the system, visit www.carex.caricom.org or contact your local CAREX contact point. The Caricom Single Market and Economy. Make it work for you.
Home and abroad.
Hurricanes can strike at any time. In the event of one, be prepared to act quickly. If a hurricane watch or warning has been issued, review your home disaster response plan. Map out likely routes to evacuate if your home is at risk and confirm with relatives or friends you plan to stay with. Also, confirm the location of the nearest shelter. Check your emergency supplies and restock if necessary. Remember, disasters do happen, so be prepared.
As we wrap up this program, Program 4, we do take note and make a mention of the support given to us from the European Union, not just for the program, but also on this journey of regional integration. That said, Ms. Ridley, I come to you. With the past programs, we looked at what is happening in the CSME and the connection with other integration measures. We also touched on the support on the projects being funded by the European Union under the 10th European Development Fund. On this journey, what would you say are the next measures to be put in place? We spoke of the work to be done under the single economy, and would you even say that there may be still bits and pieces of the market to be put in place?
Good evening. I think most of the market is in place. Unfortunately, we have made a separation between the market and the economy, but those two are coming together. We need to particularly complete our free movement exercise. Heads of government, when they met earlier this year, agreed on some priorities that we need to address. And these include, for example, completing the procedural issues and the legislative matters that are still outstanding. But perhaps even more important is to treat with the issue of contingent rights, which means those rights which those skilled persons who are moving across the region could reasonably expect to enjoy. We also need to address the issue of free movement in itself. We have 10 categories which currently move. It is very onerous to, in fact, try to identify those categories in the process of moving. So on the table, once again, is how do we move to full free movement? Is that more easily able to be organized than, for example, just trying to identify each category? We also need to address issues relating to trade. The single market and economy is only as good as it supports or thrusts towards growth and development. And growth and development includes agriculture, it includes transportation, it includes tourism, it includes ICT, and a number of other sectors. Insofar as these sectors contribute to what they're supposed to contribute to production and trade, then it means we have to determine how we engage the private sector much more than we do now, and how, in fact, we can achieve that ultimate objective we have, which is not only the production and trade, but also a better standard of living for the people of the Caribbean.
You had started and said, unfortunately, we had separated the economy from the market. Why did we?
It's just a management process. We felt that the areas related to the market were the movement of goods, the services. We already started goods a long time ago. Skilled persons, capital, establishment. Those might be more easily implemented. And therefore, in terms of the capacity we also had at the time, in terms of the skills we had available, the resources we had available, we started with the market aspect of it. However, at this stage, if we pass that, we are fully into focusing on the economy part of the CSME, because the market would not be effective without the economy part. I know in the earlier episodes that we did address those outstanding matters. But even as we speak, the market and economy sectors, that is a good way to put this. How effective are the single market and economy measures in achieving the ultimate objective, which we have set ourselves? Our strategic plan, for example, identifies that in order to support the objectives of the region, we have to expedite and accelerate the implementation of the CSME. And this is all aspects of the CSME. We've given ourselves until 2019. It will never be totally, completely finished, but to have the major elements effectively operating and used. I think that the next steps we're talking about is using the arrangements we have in place. If we don't use them, we wouldn't see the benefits there are. And I think the task we have before us, how do we make that happen?
Okay. I'm going to go to the private sector person here, but a nice slip into him would be to ask you about something we call the built-in agenda. What is that, and what are the elements of that for the private sector?
Again, the business agenda was a matter of convenience. When we were revising the treaty, we set ourselves some deadlines and some elements. And insofar as we wanted to have a complete product, there were some areas where we were not able at that time to complete. So we identified about 5 elements of what would make a CSME more effective. And these related to free zones, establishments of free zones. It related to free circulation of goods. Once the goods entered into the Caricom region, that they could circulate freely across the region. They related to e-commerce. We started work on that. We have not completed work on that. It also related to government procurement, which would be a new market for us. And as I mentioned before, contingent rights. Those are the rights which, when you move across the region, you can reasonably expect to have access to, whether education, for example, health services, for example. And that is what is going to make free movement attractive. Free movement in itself is a measure which enables us to use our resources across the region. In some cases, a country might be too small to in fact, absorb the strengths and skills that are available there, or they just might not have them available to themselves. So we can pick and choose which countries these skills are available and where we can use them, or which countries we can go to provide the services and the skills.
Okay. Mr. Foster, welcome. Private sector is always busy. Thank you for your time to be here.
Thanks for having me.
Your website, I did go on it. It says that you are the Caribbean largest auto care retailer of car enhancement products and services, and you're presently in 7, I counted them, 7 of the Caricom member states participating in the CSME. What was your experience like in establishing across the CSME? Did you use any of the CSME processes?
Yes. First of all, we have stores in 7, but we actually sell our products in all. So our primary business is automotive paint. What you see on our website is our retail presence, which is in 7. So yes, we did. We used the CSME. Obviously, if you look at Barbados, where we were born, let's say, we're a population of 275,000 people. CSME is around 13, 14 million in all, and the wider Caribbean is 45 million. So that's a big market. So for us, it was critical to not look at the island in which where we started, more importantly, to look at where the possibilities for us to go. I was very pleased to hear about the major issues with moving people. Like a business like us, it's critical that we're able to move people across the region. Unfortunately, not all of them have qualified under the Skilled National Program. That's one issue. And the second issue is, what do you do about their spouses and their family? For example, when we move people to the United States, their spouses are automatically given a work permit, just like them. So the spouse is free to work. The children have access to schools wherever they live. Up till high school is provided free in the United States, and they could go to school for free because their parents are now resident in the United States. Those are some of the things that I think would be very attractive to companies like mine and to the people that are, that work with us. Because then they don't have to think about these things. What would I do? What would my wife do? My wife is a lawyer. What would she do? I can't move or not work, for example, or my husband in some instances. So I think those are things we need to work on. I'm glad to hear that you're addressing it. And I'm not one for borders, so I don't believe we should build barriers. Although free trade has helped my company. I mean, the free trade movement of goods in Caricom has helped my company. It's not something I think, is a big benefit to any organization that wants to be global. Global organizations are not about barriers, it's about removing them. So we benefited from it, of course, but I think, the tariffs we have in place without the bond rates that Barbados has, for example, is more than enough to protect any business from the Caricom. And in some instances, I think that the big tariffs hinder businesses from exporting. It doesn't help.
Just to say, though, you guys know that spouses can, in fact, work. That was a decision taken by heads of government, I think, a year or two ago. So at least we're on par where that is concerned. With respect to education and health services, even though we say contingent rights is an outstanding issue, some countries do, in fact, allow access to these services because in fact, in some countries, primary school education is compulsory. So they have to go to school. Emergency health care, they're not likely to turn you back if you have to go for emergency health services. So what you wanted to get is better streamlined so that you know that it's your right and that is something you can do. You also have the right to move of your managerial, technical, and supervisory staff, which again allows you to operate effectively in another member state.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to come back to see if you used any of that when you were setting up and if you continue to use. But for now, as usual, we go around the Caribbean and we ask persons a certain question each time on Chatting Caricom. And this time around, we asked, what do you want the CSME to do for you?
Well, first of all, provide more job opportunities for us in the Caribbean. A lot of people go away and study, and when they come back, they have no job opportunities. So that's what I want them to do for us.
Not for me, but for the country. We, like our local farmers, they have very, very good product, and our product is the best. And we think that we should export and make the CMC do the work what they're supposed to do as an Caribbean central marketing and boost our product in order for go around the place. That's what we like to see SME for do.
From many distant lands, our forefathers came, some seeking adventure.
Have you or someone you know been diagnosed with diabetes? If so, it is important that you know.
Not mad if we've not arrived. He's just happy that you're here today wanting to learn more.
You'll be refreshed and strengthened as you hear powerful messages of hope and transformation.
God, I want you to lead me and guide me, and I'm going to do what you want me to do. I don't care what it costs.
As an inner city youth, I'm a duty to know my rights. Not because you see me on the corner, you are going to abuse me.
I have a life to live. I deserve to be heard and respected. I know my rights. Know your laws. Know your rights. Respect you.
I had no clue I was being abusive. That the things I would say hurt him so much. I wasn't hitting him or anything, but my words were just as hurtful.
It got to a point where I couldn't take it anymore. I was fed up, and I came this close to lashing out at her. I decided then it had to stop.
We've been seeing a professional counselor for almost 6 months now, and our relationship has been much better.
If you're a victim of domestic abuse, speak with a professional counselor for support. A message from the Ministry of National Security.
When you feel like giving.
Wait, hold on. Colin, hey, what go on? You know, say, I'm on my way to go look about the farm work program.
Yes, you can tell it's a studio audience. Cameraman must focus on the feet of the audience, tap into the Caricom song. It's a very good song. Before we went to, you saw from the Vox Pop some of the issues that we had already spoken about over the years in terms of what the CSME responds to. You would have seen the young lady ask about jobs, and the individual who I think is a farmer, he was speaking about a bigger market. Before we went to the break though, Derek, I was about to ask if you had specifically used any of the CSME processes in establishing your business. You spoke initially about the wider market, but in terms of moving your staff, of establishing, did you use any of the processes?
We did. We have several times in moving staff around the region, where we, use the Skill National program to move people. Yeah, we have used that. In the past, we had a factory in Barbados that produced products, so we benefited from the single market, duty-free entry or tariff-free entry into the markets. So we have benefited from multiple of Caricom. I'm a big believer in Caricom. I think it should expand and get bigger. I mean,
when you say bigger, you mean widening and have more member states?
And have more free market, so I'm very glad that, for example, Haiti. We sell quite a lot of product in Haiti, and Haiti is a big market, 11 million people. On the same island is another 11 million on the other side. They speak a different language, but it's still 11 million. So just in the two of them, that one island is bigger than the rest of, or let's say, the traditional Caricom market. So you can see how important it is to start in the more, certainly in the Caribbean, in more countries we could include. Cuba is big as well, different issues, but the more countries we could bring into the market. I would like to see the 45 million in the Caribbean be part of the single market and the single market economy.
But to start with, at least, if you take with trade, even though, say, the Cuba and the DR are not members of Caricom, we do have free trade agreements with them. So in terms of trade, you still have the same benefits. Trade in goods, you still have the same benefits.
Yeah, I recognize that.
So one has to move in step to see how far we can go with the level of integration we can do at any particular point in time. Because 45 million, a lot of millions to manage.
Philip, I'm so sorry. Don't wait for me to ask the question, Joe. But we spoke about some of the new opportunities, Philip, and one of the areas I know you are coordinating at the Secretariat has to do with government procurement. Where are we in that regard in terms of opportunities for the private sector? And is that one of the areas we are having assistance from the EU as well?
Yeah, the government procurement regime is one of the 5 areas that are part of the building agenda. One can say that government procurement is the most advanced of the 5. In that, we've developed the policy, the framework, regional policy on public procurement. That was way back in 2011. We have, at this time, developed and drafted the protocol. It went through a series of consultations in member states through the Intergovernmental Task Force, the IGTF, and went through the organs of the committee, the COTED and COFAP. It went to the Legal Affairs committee, the Committee of Attorney General, the body responsible for approving all legal instruments in the community. And the next step, and which is the final step for this regime, is to be taken to the heads for signature. So we are very close to accomplishing this goal of having a complete regime on public procurement. What is extremely important about public procurement is that you have 14 markets, and you're going to unify 14 markets, 14 member states, that is, and into one single space for market access in government procurement. So on the one hand, you have 14 governments buying goods, services, and the procurement of works from the private sector. So you have the private sector now have opportunities in 14 member states to sell their goods, to provide services, and of course to participate in works, public works, in 14 member states. The procurement market has not been quantified over the time because you have a lot of, you don't have enough data, but it is estimated that the public procurement market in the region is between 25 to 30 billion US dollars. That is the amount of money from the private sector that government, expend on an annual basis to procure goods, from pens, pencils, and the list goes on, to services, professional services, and then public works. So you can see the opportunity as you integrate 14 markets into a unified space. But
a follow-on question though, Philip, is there a structure in place of accessing the market, or is it just carte blanche?
The structure is that we are looking at two levels. There is something called below the threshold. So you have, for goods and services, procurement values that are, for example, below 150,000 US dollars for goods and services. That is for your national space. Any procurement opportunity that is at and above that value, 150,000 US for goods and services, and 3 million US for works, then the market is open at that point to all Caricom nationals in the 14 member states. So a supplier can bid on a project at and about 3 million US dollars in any member state. So in other words, the member state will have to advertise that opportunity, and there will be no restrictions to allow Caricom nationals to, in any of the 14 member states, to bid on projects that are at and above the threshold.
I can see Derek looking at you with great interest with this market that you're speaking about. We have to take another commercial break, however, and once again we hear from the region in terms of what the CSME can do for them.
What I think is missing as they attempt to establish a Caribbean single market and economy is there is not an enthusiasm among the people for it. They don't seem to be an appetite for it. It seems as though the politicians in the region pushing this thing and the people aren't really buying it. So there needs to be people's involvement, and the information needs to come down where people need to know. People need to know what is happening, and people need to, it's supposed to be indoctrinated into the psyche of the Caribbean people, and this is the direction in which we're going. But to me, most people don't seem to care. They don't seem to be bothered. And one of the reasons why this is so is because the Caribbean society is so divided. There's so many media houses. There's a complete social destabilization existing in the Caribbean, and the result of that is almost a multiplicity of society. Everybody living different lives, everybody in different directions. There's not a common agenda. And that, the main reason for that, I think, is that because you have one or two people running around from Caricom saying they're doing information, but it has to be an information saturation approach where it is heard every day, and all the issues and the technical aspect of it is brought down on the street so people can understand that this is what we need to go, this is where we need to go, this is why it's important, and this is how we're going to get there. But at the moment, that whole collective approach towards achieving this end, it is really not happening. That's a major absence from this bid to establish a CSME.
From many distant lands, our forefathers came, some seeking adventure, some bound in
Caricom Single Market and Economy, CSME, opportunities to relocate for work as a Caricom skilled national have been expanded to include 10 categories of persons. 2 of those categories are artisans and household domestics holding a Caribbean vocational qualification, or CVQ. A CVQ is a certificate you can apply for based on how well you do your job. If you are certified as a household domestic, including housekeepers and home health workers, or an artisan, including persons in the building trade, craft persons, and machine operators, you could be eligible to move for work. CVQ standards have been developed with regional employers, so your skills will be recognized wherever you go. Contact your national training agency to find out about CVQs for artisans or household domestics, or visit csmeonline.org for more information. The Caricom Single Market and Economy. Make it work for you.
Pumpkin ripe and ready to reap for market. They must pay for school fee, light bill, water, and put food on the table. Even down to my cow them killed. All gone. Them steal my sweat, my labor. Them steal my future.
Predator larceny will not be tolerated anymore. You're going down hard. There are big cash rewards. Crime Stop. Solving crime pays.
Join the fight. Quit smoking for life.
Welcome back to Chat in Caricom, and we are almost halfway there. Goes very fast, Derek. And this time we give the studio audience the opportunity, of course, to ask questions and engage. And those of you watching on the systems across the region and online, you can also call in. The number will be scrolled across the bottom of the screen. Please do, and send in your comments and questions to the panel for us to discuss and respond to. Derek, before we went to the break, I saw you looking with enthusiasm at some of the things Philip was saying. And the question I ask is, what would make some members of the private sector more aggressive than others in terms of wanting to engage on the single market, while others are just contented with the national borders?
I can't really speak for them, but what I can tell you is that they would be fairly stupid not to engage in that, and that chances are they will be eaten. It's just a matter of time. The reality is, if you're not a Caribbean, at least a Caribbean company, you're not going to grow to any significance in any single territory. I don't care which territory it is. So regional players are getting more regional. And for example, you can see in Massey across the region, they've now rebranded. It's clear their brand strategy all over the region. There are many more companies like them that are going to become focused on the region and growing in the region. And local entities or in one country are going to struggle to compete against them. I was listening about government procurement. A company like ours is easy for us. I could bid on a contract, for example. If I win it, I already have stores in 7 Caricom countries, and I have partners in all the rest. So should I win a contract, that's a benefit to me and my partners that are around the region that distribute our products or own our franchise in our stores. Is a benefit to them. a benefit they couldn't have if we weren't a regional company. Because imagine the buying power I have relative to, say, a single person operating a tire shop in St. Kitts. Think about the price that I would buy tires at, for example, relative to one operator in one island. You could understand there's going to be a massive difference.
And I suspect when you say Eton as well, you're also looking at the international forces coming into the Caribbean.
Of course.
Like while you're looking at other Caricom countries, there are other conglomerates from the world coming in to your own space. And I guess the technocratic phrase would be, we have to be more competitive.
That's a realistic phrase.
And I think that's the correct answer. I mean, the real issue is I tell you what frustrates me. What frustrates me is when we in the Caribbean, Barbados is probably one of the best at it, compare ourselves to countries that are lesser off than us, as opposed to the ones that are better off than us. So our strive is not to compare to be the best. We strive to compare against the ones that aren't the best. And I have a real problem with that, and that the private sector is no different. When I hear my colleagues comparing themselves to, oh, well, you know, we're better than this company in St. Kitts or this company, well, you're measuring wrong. I measure myself against BASF and DuPont. Those are companies I want to measure myself against, not, you know, Penta, for example. And I think that's part of the problem with why people don't embrace Caricom and don't look to Caricom. They're happy in their fiefdoms, right? And we all are, right? And change is not easy, and we all get comfortable.
Okay. I know Derek can go all night because he's passionate, but one of the things, Desiree, is transportation. And you earlier spoke about the sectors. It is a bugbear we have heard about over the years. It is critical for regional integration. What are we doing at the community level in terms of improving regional travel?
Well, travel is one part of it. The other part is the movement of goods. And just before I come to the movement of persons, one of the contributors mentioned agriculture goods moving across the region. Apart from the actual access to the market, where we have our sanitary and phytosanitary measures. But in terms of the movement of goods across the region, that is one project, in fact, which is being overseen by both the transportation people and the agriculture people. And in fact, it's a project that was supported by the EDF, where we're seeking to identify how we can, in fact, ensure that these goods are transported across the region. What is the most effective way of doing that? Recommendations have been developed, and these are to be put to our ministerial session so that we can get the necessary support in terms of getting it done. We had an issue, I think, on an early episode with the fast ferry service for both goods and persons. Again, it takes capital, it takes investment. It also has to be done in a context where you've seen a profit in that. Right now, the pilot for that is pretty expensive, about $5 million. Which we've started to look at. We had an interest, and that went. But what is currently on the table, perhaps even more so, is the transportation of persons across the region. This is a region that is separated by borders and by water. Let us make integrated across those borders and across that water. We have a transportation commission which was established by heads of government. And in fact, when heads met in February, they mandated that those transportation ministers meet and make recommendations on how we can address the movement of persons across the region. It has been one of the areas that has been with integration movement from time immemorial. We have made decisions with respect to ease of travel across the regions. First started with our airlines, government-owned airlines. We have 4 government-owned airlines: Suriname, Trinidad, the Liat, Bahamas. And these airlines have agreed, and they have started that process years ago. They do functional cooperation as it is right now, but to focus even more diligently on how they can work together towards making that travel experience and experience you want to have. And they've been given a timeline of next heads where they can put forward a program for this, even in addition to what they currently do. We are also seeking, there's always the problem of, why is it so difficult to travel across the region? Why do I have to have a security check at almost every point I am going, even if I'm just changing, probably not even changing flights? This has to do partly with the safety standards and security standards at each port, and member states not yet implementing the standards which have been agreed at International Civil Aviation Organization. So we don't have confidence in each other's security arrangements. If we all had that minimum standard, we'd have better confidence, and it'd be easier not to have that security check. That's an area which have mandated that needs to be addressed. There's also the issue of the...
But you do agree, though, that for the average person, not the average person, all of us, it is frustrating, especially when you come off the same airline and you have to go through the security check to go back on the same airline.
I absolutely agree, which is why we have been mandated to look at it specifically. How can we address that issue? And in fact, ICAO, which is the international agency, has indicated that they are willing to help us to address that issue. There's also the issue of how we travel across the region once you're in the region. We always have Cricket World Cup cited as how easy it was to move across the region. The establishment of that single domestic space, which was for a finite period of time, so it was easier to manage. We have put that back on the table. Has mandated that we address that. And focus on how that can in fact be effective. There's also in terms of how the airlines coming into the region and those in the region function. They've agreed that we need to establish a single airspace, and therefore we have to develop the roadmap towards establishing a single airspace. So I've identified some of the big issues which have got to be addressed if we're going to make that travel experience not only because it's necessary, but because people do it for leisure and pleasure, and we say we establish a single space. We can't have a single space if we can't move across a single space.
I will tell you, panel and studio audience and across the region, the next iteration of this program must be an hour and a half. This is the final 15 minutes as we go to commercial break, and once again hear from the people across the region what the CSME can do for them.
As I don't know much about CSME, so I can say that as a fact, and as a grassroots person, I can really understand the concern of other people. Education is the key towards the CSME. A lot of us don't know anything about the CSME. We hear this piece and bits, but not like a steady conversation. So then we get adequate knowledge about the whole situation of the CSME.
Distant lands, our forefathers came, some seeking adventure, some
60 years ago.
That spreads the Zika, chikungunya, and dengue viruses. Search for its breeding sites and destroy them. A message from the Ministry of Health.
Hurricanes can strike at any time. In the event of one, be prepared to act quickly. If a hurricane watch or warning has been issued, review your home disaster response plan. Map out likely routes to evacuate if your home is at risk, and confirm with relatives or friends you plan to stay with. Also, confirm the location of the nearest shelter. Check your emergency supplies and restock if necessary. Remember, disasters do happen, so be prepared.
No one is above the law. We encourage all Jamaicans to join the fight against corruption, organized criminality, these nefarious activities that stymies our country's progress. I want to encourage all Jamaicans to call. We have a secure line, 1-800-CORRUPT. Call anytime, and we will treat the information received with the highest standard of confidentiality. We need your help. We want to elicit your support.
Call 1-800-CORRUPT. That's 1-800-267-7878. Be the change. Report corruption today.
Welcome back to Chatting Caricom, and once again in this last segment, the studio audience, of course, you're invited to participate. You can ask questions or make any comment concerning CSME and the integration movement, what we're speaking about in our final session in Chatting Caricom tonight. The two Vox Pops identified and spoke about education, the need for information, and as one of the two persons referred to running up and down the region in terms of carrying the message, as my friend from Grenada in the earlier Vox Pop says, I think you're another one, Philip, in terms of carrying the message of regional integration. It is agreed that it's not just for the Secretariat or Secretariat staff, but also for the member states themselves to have buy-in and to assist in educating the people of the region on the Caricom single market and economy, and in fact this community for all. Philip, I see all of what we are doing specifically for the consumers. As soon as you're born, you are consuming, and it will be good to put in now what do we have in place specific to consumer education. We just launched the CAREX. I mustn't speak about acronyms, so spell it out for me, and if that portal is operating.
Yeah, indeed. We always see that consumers are the largest economic group in any economy, and sometimes, their voices are hardly ever heard. But they are very important and integral to economic development. Consumers really provide the fuel of growth in the economy. We cite the private sector as the engine of growth, but consumers indeed provide the fuel for that growth. And you must never forget the demand side policies as well. And one can say that the community has done a very good job, as Caricom, in terms of advancing the welfare of consumers. And I was looking at some of the regional trade agreements throughout this world, throughout the world, in fact, and it is only two regional arrangements that have positively integrated consumer protection in the region. That is the European Union and the Caribbean community. And that is commendable. And the fact is that when you look at consumers as critical to the success of business, you begin to see why it is important to ensure that there is a balancing act in terms of promotion of consumer welfare and consumer interests. And in the region, what we have seen is the development of a model bill for consumer protection to achieve harmonization across member states. And it has reached the point of approval at the level of the Legal Affairs Committee, and now passed on to member states. Quoted has given members 2 years to fully implement consumer protection legislation harmonized across.
And by quoted, you're talking about the Council for Trade,
Council for Trade and Economic Development at its 44th meeting in November last year. We have also moved one step further in ensuring that you have a platform to allow consumers to lodge complaint online. And it is what is called the Caricom Rapid Alert System for the exchange of information on dangerous non-food consumer goods. It is similar to what obtains in the EU, the Rapid Alert System. So you can actually track dangerous goods that have entered your market, and it poses a threat to the life and the health and safety of consumers. You also have a similar arrangement by the US FDA and the other agencies that look after non-food items. For example, the Consumer Product Safety Commission. So that is what we have mirrored in the region, and given the region a platform where consumers, where the member states can now work together by establishing what is called a CAREX national network in all the member states, and then use the regional platform to share that information. For example, if you have a dangerous good on the market in Barbados, the authorities can do the investigation, get the information that they need, and work with the private sector where that is concerned. They may want to initiate a recall if it is dangerous, and that information can be shared through the Caricom platform in all the 15 members. Now we have 15 because we've included the Bahamas as part of the Caricom arrangement, so that you can share information across member states, just in the same way that the FDA would publish a recall and so on, and other countries would publish a recall. We can do so now in the region, publish recalls, and so that people can be made aware of dangerous goods on the market, and the authorities can work together to detect, investigate, and of course take action to remove those goods that pose a threat to the region.
That would certainly be a good thing, because we usually hear what is coming out of the U.S. and we have been asked to ensure that this break is not good and this, that. So it'll be good if we can do it for ourselves as well. Mr. Foster, you've been listening thus far, and I normally like to start to segue into the wrap-up before the wrap-up starts. Listening thus far, what further would you like the integration movement to facilitate for you?
Well, I would like, obviously, I said earlier, a bigger market. But the truth is that I think that the integration movement, if we could just get it to where we could move goods and people freely, I think it would be fantastic for the region. And we've made great progress in that, no doubt about it. I listened to some of the concerns, and unfortunately, I think too many people in the Caribbean relies on somebody else to do something for them, right? So, I'm not going to wait on somebody to tell me what the treaty is. I'm going to get the treaty and figure out how it's going to benefit my organization. So I think too many people are always relying on government or, various organizations to do their work. And I think that's part of the problem we have with in particular, the private sector around the region, is nobody seems to be willing to do the work. And I'm glad to hear about airlines. Frankly speaking, I think we should abandon all government airlines and have a free sky policy, and then travel will be solved overnight. But then you have to have the will. And that's where we lack all the time by member states. We don't have the will. So I've been a frequent flyer of LIAT for many, many years, and I can tell you I'm looking forward to the day when it doesn't fly anymore. So, and it is because governments support it. And I understand why they do it. But honestly, some things need to die for new ones to blossom. And the airline industry needs to be freed up so that we could be able to move goods and services around the region very easily. But as long as governments own airlines, we're going to have a problem.
To comment on that one?
I'm going to, because I also have a comment to make on that to put something straight. But to calm the waters a bit, I will go to a break and then speak to you off camera.
From many distant lands, our forefathers came. Some seeking adventure, some bound to
grow your business. Come together and create a safer and prosperous Jamaica.
A message from the Ministry of National Security.
Parents, make sure the children get immunized. Hear this! Immunization, it is a must. This is not a joke thing, this you can trust. It is required by law for entry to nursery, to daycare and to schools. Listen up, it is necessary to prevent diseases such as the measles, the poliomyelitis, the lockjaw and the whooping cough. Immunize your kids, keep them healthy, keep them strong. Prevent deadly diseases such as mumps, rubella and diphtheria. Immunize your child today. Immunization, a key to good health.
A message from the Ministry of Health and PAHO.
If Jamaica was a safer place, everybody could have give God thanks, and knowing that them neighbor look out for them and them look out for them neighbor. Because it's all about looking out for one another, you know. To make Jamaica a safer place, you'd have to live and love and respect each and every individual like how you'd love yourself. Let's create a safer Jamaica.
A message from the Ministry of National Security.
Hi, I'm Christelle Tomlinson, and I endorse WMW's Power House campaign.
Hi, I'm Javian Nelson, and I believe women have contributed to all areas of Jamaica's development. And so, there is no doubt that they are all powerhouses.
And so, as women, we have to understand and recognize and own that we are powerhouses. I am a powerhouse. You are a powerhouse.
As an inner city youth, I'm a duty to know my rights. Not because you see me on the corner, you are going to abuse me.
I have a life to live. I deserve to be heard and respected. I know my rights. Know your laws. Know your rights. Respect you.
Boy, I don't like them things there, you know.
Don't worry yourself, man. We have it locked. What going bossy? I'm exclusive here, you know.
Yeah? What?
And the new truth from Attahead, the thing slap you now.
Alright. If it word play, it will get played.
Welcome back to our wrap-up part of Chatting Caricom. And I promise that we'll calm the waters a bit because some, Derek, may have a different view in terms of your pronouncement on Liat. And Desiree was trying to get in 2 points just before we went to break. I will allow her to do that now.
First, airlines were privately owned at one time. Not many airlines make a profit, so we have to bear that in mind. Secondly, we've reached a stage in the new multilateral aid services agreement among all Caricom countries, where heads have agreed that at their next meeting, they will in fact, or should be in a position to sign that agreement. That agreement will make it possible for what we call the third tier airlines, those smaller airlines, well, not airlines, you might call them, those smaller companies, to offer the services more easily across the region. So if you have Liat going to certain places and can't get to another place, those other smaller air services can in fact provide that service. Remember that air services are absolutely necessary for integrating all the member states across the region. If you leave it to strictly commercial determination, you're going to have some of those areas not properly serviced. So it has to be a combination, and the tourism, both the tourism organization and the hotel and tourism have acknowledged that there needs to be a private-public partnership in providing those services across the region.
Yes, I agree with that, but I don't think the public should be running the airlines. I think the private should run in, and if the government of any territory feels that it needs to subsidize the bringing of an airplane there on a daily basis, then they should do that. The challenge is when you are in the private sector trying to compete with a government entity where profit is not a motive, then how are you ever going to compete? Liat has lost money, I don't know if it's ever made.
Yes, it has made.
I don't think American Airlines could survive if it didn't make money, nor any of the other airlines. So airlines do make a lot of money, especially now with fuel prices. But part of the problem is it's impossible for a private sector to compete with government entities that continue to rack up losses at unbelievable levels.
But you do agree, and you just did with Bisfield Ridley, in terms of if you let everything be run by the private sector, there'll be certain pockets that will not be facilitated by the private sector. And I come in from the little country that started Liat. Most persons don't know that story. It actually started in Montserrat on an airstrip called Alveston. And it moved from there to Antigua at the then Coolidge. And little 5,000 populations still believe that they are worthy to be called part of Caricom. So there is a case to be made for certain areas where the private sector may be looking for profit, but there are people who need to be serviced as well.
Well, I could tell you that I'm pretty confident that whatever you tell me, I could have a solution for you pretty quickly in terms of whatever it is that you're trying to solve and so on. So, for example, let's pick that one. So Montserrat is a small country. So part of getting the rights to fly into, say, Puerto Rico, you have to fly into Montserrat. You're just saying. These things are easily solved. The same, I hear this argument about bus service in Barbados. So you give a very popular route, with one that's not so popular, you have to service it, you bid on it. There are many solutions. Listen, all these problems have been solved. The real issue that we have in Caricom, and I'm telling you I've been to all, is the will on behalf, not only the government, the private sector, also the unions, to implement things that have to be done. And if they don't, our fate is clear.
Mr. Derek Foster.
Yes, sir.
Not that I'm using the will of moderator, but I have to wrap up in terms of the comments. Otherwise, I would have had a response for you as well.
No problem.
But it can't be a Salas and Derek show. Final comments in about 10, 20 seconds as we go around quickly.
Starting?
Yes.
Next step. From all the comments we're hearing, we have to be able to ensure that on a continuous basis, information is available. I think that is, we had a discussion on it. We have to orient ourselves to enable us to do that. We also have to identify how it is we are going to ensure, or you can't ensure, but you're going to facilitate the different stakeholders, whether it's the private sector, whether it's the public sector, whether it's civil society, making use, exploiting the facilities and measures that we have put in place. Because the effectiveness of the CSME is only be as good as it is used. So we set ourselves 2 priorities, let's say, for the next year or 2. Public education, public awareness, and the involvement of our various stakeholders in using the single mark CSME arrangements to the benefit of all of us.
Thanks very much. Philip, 30.
Indeed, what we are trying to do now is to take advantage of the technological age, and a number of our programs will be going online. For example, the procurement will go online very shortly. Labor market information is going online. We have the online company registry, so you can actually go and register a company online, and that is work in progress, very near completion in terms of fully operationalizing.
Thank you ever so much, Philip. I'll apologize tomorrow. Derek, you have the same 13 seconds.
Well, I think that we need to capitalize more on what we already have in place in the private sector. I think most private sector people don't capitalize on it, and that's their problem, frankly. But we have a lot already, and people always complain about what we don't have and don't look at what we have. So I think if the private sector engaged what we have, we would be fine.
Thanks ever so much, and we leave it at that as we come to the final in the 4-part series, Chatting Caricom. We say thanks to the support of the European Union in facilitating this broadcast, and we at the Caricom Secretariat, we are also trying our best to see how we can continue this set of programs maybe for a year in going forward. So please ensure that you look at this space. Thanks, of course, to the support of the Caribbean Media Corporation and these lovely studios here in Barbados. And the audience comes out regularly once a month for this activity, and the team and the crew who are all here each time when we start the show. Final wrap for Chatting Caricom. My name is Salas Hamilton. You may see me again on such a program. Have a good night.